Sleep paralysis. It's a blur between the realms of the dreams and lucid. It's where the subconscious crawls up through the pits and takes control. You wake up frozen in time, unable to move as your dreams bleeds into your reality and turns it into a nightmare. It all started in 2015. I'd recently graduated from Sheridan College, the one in Brampton, Ontario, and was all set to jump into the world of accounting. It was an exciting chapter in my life. I decided to celebrate all of it by taking a short vacation at my grandma's house up in Muskoka. My dad left my mom when I was 8. It was devastating for my mother. She had to raise me as well as make a living on an income of a barber. That is when her mom, my grandma, took us in. I believe my best memories begin after we had moved in with her in Muskoka. I pretty much grew up in that house. In life, I could travel the world, go big or end up somewhere else entirely, but nothing would replace the comfort, the sense of belonging, and the love I have for that home. It's a part of me. So yes, it was the perfect vacation. To go back to your foundation before starting something new, it was almost poetic and meditative. I drove there with my mom. We left around 6 p.m. on a Wednesday during early weeks of summer. It's about a 2-hour drive. We reached around sundown. My mom unlocked the door. We entered. It was like entering my childhood. I felt like me again, away from all the worries of adulthood. Grandma was in her late 70s, but still insisted on making dinner for us. We ate, went through some old photo albums, played some board games, talked, and overall had a calm, soothing evening. Now it was time to sleep. I went directly to my former room. The carpet was different. The bed had been replaced. But as you lay there and look at the ceiling, you'd always see this X mark that's been there since I can remember. Just that mark, that stain was enough to push me deep into nostalgia. I fell asleep. I don't usually remember my dreams, but this one was strange. I saw I was 6 or 7 years old, in a backseat of a car with my mom, and my dad was there too. I was in the middle, and it felt like we were in a cab, and it stuck in a bumper-to-bumper rush hour. It was nighttime. Parents seemed to be getting along, which was strange as that never happened in reality. It was then I heard a shriek. I turned and looked to my right side and saw this figure. I couldn't make sense of it first, but as it got closer, I realized it's not walking on the road. It's not walking at all, in fact. It was hovering 4-5 feet above the ground and coming right at us. I froze. As it got closer, I could clearly see it's a woman in a thin, silky black dress that fell straight down her body. Her hair was long, parted from the middle and reaching her knees. Her skin was pale, eyes big with no expression, thin lips, and her movements were very controlled, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. She floated right at our window at my dad's side. I could see her clearly. Her face was much bigger than it should have been. It was like someone used clay and imitated how a human face looks like without really seeing one. I can't explain it. After that, my mother grabbed me, opened her the door on her side, and tossed me out of the car. I was scared, confused, and horrified. I tried to get back in the cab, but she locked it. She then looked at me with a strange grin. I could feel my heart in my mouth. The hovering woman was now on my right, just staring at me expressionlessly. Whatever she was, whatever it was, it felt evil. I ran, and occasionally I'd turn back to see if she is there. And yes, she'd be there, floating behind me, chasing me at a distance. No emotion on her face, just persistently following me. No matter how fast or slow I ran, the distance between her and me would not alter. Later, I found myself in our old apartment, the one we lived in before my parents separated. I ran into my room, shut, and locked the door. I sat in front of my wall mirror, and for a moment I thought I was safe. I wasn't. My door flew open, and there she was, just glaring at me. I screamed. That is when I was pushed out of that nightmare and found myself awake, back at my grandma's, looking at the ceiling, looking at that X-looking stain. There was one slight problem. I couldn't move, not even a bit. I had lost all control over my body. The only thing I could do was move my eyes right to left, down to up. That's it. I had never experienced this before. It was a sleep paralysis, something I never heard of. I was trying to move, trying to scream, trying to snap out of it, but to no avail. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I saw that same woman in black in my room, hovering at the foot of my bed, I could just see her head, as that's how far I could roll my eyes down. Slowly, she began to float up towards the ceiling, turned horizontal, and then began to float right above me. I kept looking at the X mark on the ceiling, trying to comfort myself, but she blocked it very quickly. She was above me, 2 feet away from me. She was parallel to me, kept staring at me while I was locked in my body and locked in fear of the worst kind. Eventually, I heard a scream from afar and I snapped out of the paralysis. Turned out, it was me screaming. It was a twisted way of my body to wake me up fully. I could move again. The woman was gone. It was day now. I couldn't tell how long I was stuck in that moment with her. I was questioning my reality, my sanity, and my safety at a house that I considered to be my haven. I left my room, took a shower, and tried to go through my day as if it was nothing but a bad dream, but I couldn't shake it off. I decided to talk to my mom about it, and she educated me about sleep paralysis and how my dad used to get them as well. I was intrigued and did my own research on this phenomenon. That really helped, as having all that information gave me a scientific perspective over the situation. I was seeing it from more of a lens of rationality and not superstition. Months went by, and I expected to fully forget about my experience, which I did for the most part, but each time I'd try to sleep, for a minute or two, I'd find myself thinking about it in paranoia. It was the winter of 2016. I had a job and was working long hours at a law firm. I was the junior accountant. The firm was severely understaffed, so I had to put in a lot of hours to meet deadlines and keeping our side of things floating. One night I went to bed. The next day was a big one. Few CEOs were going to drop by from the head office just to check on us, so I wanted to make sure everything is done to its best. I set my alarm for 7:45 a.m. and called it a day. I ended up dreaming about my office, which is very normal. Sometimes we dream about our workplaces. After all, we spend a better half of our days there. I saw myself in my little cabin, just entering some numbers into the database. At one point, I stopped and looked outside the window. It was raining and foggy. I thought to myself, wow, I stayed back late today. I stood up, walked to the window, and everything looked different. My actual office is in the downtown of Brampton, but in the dream, it was surrounded by fields and forests. It was in the middle of nowhere. I walked around the building and realized I am the only one here. I decided to pack up and leave. I started walking back to my cabin. For some reason, the hallways felt longer, narrower, darker, and slightly tempered. I kept walking and suddenly I felt the air changing and a river of fear rushed through my body. I sensed a presence behind me. I turned around and there she was, the same woman in black from months ago. She looked exactly the same, emotionless, expressionless, and fixated on me. I froze and she was just there staring at me calmly. I broke out my trance and ran. She followed me. Suddenly, the dream felt like an extension of my last dream of her. I was a kid again. The hallways were not familiar anymore. I was at another place entirely. I ran into the fields, stumbled and fell, turned around, and now lying on the back facing up. She quickly hovered over me. I screamed and snapped out of my dream. To my horror, as I opened my eyes, she was right there, hovering just 2 feet above me in my room, my body frozen and stuck in that moment. She never screamed or did any of those horror movies nonsense. She simply looked at me with those eyes that didn't suggest any intention. There is something sinister about it. It felt like she wanted to kill me with fear. Imagine cooking something on a low heat for 10 days. That's how I felt she'd like me to go. Pure manic hate is what I felt from her towards me. I went through the same experience of helplessness and was awakened by that distant scream like last time. It was day. I went to work, went through my day feeling strange at my own office, and avoiding the hallway, I saw her in my dream. I couldn't care less about the CEOs coming to see us. I simply wanted to get done with my day and head home. Weeks went by, and I tried to forget about the dream and the paralysis that followed. I was not able to. Every night I'd go to bed with immense paranoia. I had all the reasons to, as the dreams with her and the sleep paralysis that followed became frequent. I'd have one at least once a week. I tried meditation, working out, staying healthy, reading, writing, and even sleep medications. Nothing helped. Later, I found myself drinking to bed, and all of it began to impact me on both professional and personal fronts. I was devastated. My mom came to stay with me and I shared everything with her. I was embarrassed, but I had no one else to speak with. We sat in my living room. It was a Friday night, and we had all the time to talk about it. She never made anything of my situation as she took it to be a one-time thing. However, now she was concerned and wanted to get to the root of it. She heard all of my dreams again and again, asked me how the woman from my dreams looked. Once I shared that, she went quiet and stared at a distance for a few moments, as if she was trying to resurrect a deep-buried memory. She got up and passed me a piece of paper and a pencil, asked me to draw the woman from my nightmare to my best recollection. I was reluctant, but she insisted me to. I abided. I'm not an artist, but still managed to capture the essence of that entity on paper. My mother looked at it, and I saw her eyes go wide. It was then she told me everything. Back in the 90s, when we stayed in an apartment with my dad, it was a hostile environment. Not just due to the issues between my parents, but the overall vibe of the area, the apartment building, and people there. It was not the best place to raise a family. Alicia, a woman in her 40s, and was one of the tenants of our building. She would hang out in a small park right in the front of our building. Each day my mom would take me out for a walk, we'd run into her. Of course, I don't remember any of it, but my mom remembers making small talk with her, and that she'd always be dressed in black with her long hair and pale skin. She'd never smile or speak loudly, just a very monotone person, mostly zoned out. One day I insisted on going to an arcade. My parents did not have a vehicle, so they took me on a public transit. Again, I have no memory of it. Mom tells me it was dark by the time we left the arcade. My dad had an early shift the next day, so he decided to not waste time and got us a cab. I sat in the middle. It was raining, and we were stuck in a rush hour for several minutes. The cab driver dropped us off a few meters away from our building entrance, as the road leading up to it was crooked. We got off, Mom opened the umbrella, and we walked back together. Suddenly, both of my parents stopped and held on to me tighter. My mom explained that I wasn't supposed to, but out of curiosity, I looked up and saw Alicia in her balcony, in the black dress, untied long hair, just looking down on us emotionlessly. She stepped on her railing and jumped down. I saw everything, but clearly I blocked it out. Mom felt guilty for not being able to protect me from what happened that night. Things would have been different had the cab driver dropped us off close to the building entrance, or had we left the arcade earlier. Sadly, I had to witness that. That horrible incident left a serious mark on my subconscious, and not sure why it decided to show itself after all these years. Maybe because I went back to a place that connected me to my childhood and unknowingly allowed myself to be vulnerable to both good and bad I experienced as a kid. It all made sense though. Her image in my dreams was the final visual of her that I saw. She jumped, so I never saw her walking in my dreams. She was always hovering. As horrible I felt for Alicia, I was relieved too. It all made sense finally. I began journaling and writing letters to Alicia, telling her about my day and how life is in 2016. It was just nonsense, but it helped me normalize and humanize her. Eventually, the dreams calmed down. I still saw her, but she looked more human and didn't seem hateful towards me. The dreams did not result in paralysis either. Eventually, the dreams stopped altogether. The last time I dreamed of her was years ago, and no paralysis since as well. It makes me wonder how complex our mind is. It almost felt like I put her to rest, or a part of her that was attached to me. It seems she intentionally decided to let me go and allowed me to live my life. It is all behind me, but still, there are nights when I feel, what if tonight is the night she changes her mind?